Hi, folks. Back in the Cobb TV studio with Chairman Mike Boyce for our weekly chat, and we had a very interesting morning this morning.
Yes, it was the annual prayer breakfast hosted by Cobb County. And there's been two venues here over the last month that just really shows you the spiritual depth of this county. Last month I went to the Realtors prayer breakfast, and it was packed. I was just stunned how many people showed up for that one. Mainly because I'd never been to one before and I didn't know what to expect, but it was just really, really well attended. And then the one today, which is probably the more famous one, I think this was the 26th year they've had that. And if you really want to know Cobb County and the kind of people that live in this county, the prayer breakfast this morning amply demonstrated that. It was just a really well-run program. The MC brought a humanness, a social veneer to it. It was a folksy approach to a very, very serious issue of the importance of a spiritual life in our lives. And the theme today was on the support of the military and how our military need their prayers. And I just find it remarkable. When I came to the military on active duty in 1971, I was on enlisted status 3 years before that. And it was a time when our nation went after people that were simply doing their job. Vietnam was a very controversial war, and we had to find somebody to blame, so we blamed our troops. And I just remind people that they were just doing their job. You could either be drafted or you enlisted. And because they stood up and did their patriotic duty, many of them were reviled. And it's really, really great to see 50 years later that our nation has finally acknowledged that if you have a problem with a war, don't blame the soldiers, all right? Call Washington. They're the ones that set the policy. And today, we had two really moving stories about the impact of what it means to serve in the military and how the importance of the spiritual life of your family and your community is so important to doing something which, at its most extreme is violent, ugly, and involves situations where for the rest of your life you don't want to talk about it. So I just really, really moved by the two speakers this morning, by the whole program, by the depth and breadth of the people who attended there and how they all left there re-energized about how important it is. It doesn't matter what your spiritual background is, but that you have one and you stick to it, because there are days, when it's dark and all you have is your spiritual life that's going to bring you out of that darkness. So again, it was a really, really special time. I'm glad it was there. I'm glad to live in a county that supports a program like this, and I'm glad to live in a county where people want to be part of that and manifest that every day in their daily actions.
One of the speakers I remember made kind of a comment that went along with the old saying, there are no atheists in foxholes. He kind of turned that around a little bit, but
did, right.
it was moving, like you said, for a person that does not have a military background like myself, how you realize how the thought process works for those, especially those in charge.
Yeah, and I think it's important that they highlighted that the military, they integrate a spiritual life into our programs. When we do a campaign plan, there's a religious program that's part of that campaign plan. Having done written a number of them over the years, we don't take this side of it lightly. That the military actively goes after ministers of different faiths and brings them onto active duty or into reserve status or into the Guard and makes them part of the overall life of these men and women in uniform. And they realize the importance of it and that we properly train them. So again, I just sat there this morning thinking about 1620 when the people from the Mayflower landed, those who came to Jamestown. And that was over 400 years ago. And I think that those people, if they were to sit in that audience today, they would just really, really be impressed at what they had started. But as they came here seeking religious freedom in this country to be able to practice their faith as they chose. And I think that they would really, really be both impressed and admire what this country has done to maintain that spiritual foundation, that what makes America so unique.
Well, last week when we were sitting here, we were talking about the trip that y'all had made to New York to talk to the rating agencies, right, and how we were expecting some feedback from them, which sure, we are starting to get.
Yeah, we'll get 2 ratings because we're going to be getting, when we ask for bonds, 2 of the agencies will rate us on our bond applications. So we heard back from Moody's yesterday, and they reaffirmed our AAA rating, but with some concerns because, again, we're borrowing money from one-time funds to pay for sustainment funds. And that they have the same concern that I have, that if we want to continue this quality life we have here, it involves programs that require sustained funding. You can't be robbing from Peter to pay Paul. As I tell people, Peter has left town, so Paul now has to get a steady income. And I just think that the rating agencies, in many ways, recognize what we have done in the past to get where we are now. They understood why we're doing what we're doing, but I can honestly say that this is a shot across the bow. They're not going to be expecting us to continue to fund our programs with this kind of using reserves to do that. They expect us to start using acknowledged and recognized principles for funding programs, which is an appropriate millage rate, which is why I've been saying since December, at a minimum, I need to have 1.1 mil to keep programs alive that have come to reflect the high quality life we have here in Cobb County.
And the AAA rating is not just a matter of pride, it's much more than that.
Absolutely, because the AAA rating drives the interest rate at which we borrow money. And as we all know, we borrowed money earlier last year to pay for the Parks bond. And because we had a AAA rating, people in fact paid us so we could borrow money. So we borrowed almost $3 million more than we could have because of the AAA. But also our temporary anticipatory notes, where we use it to bridge the gap between the spring and the fall, it's $90 million this year. And a dollar here, a dollar there, after a while, with higher interest rate adds up to a lot of money, which comes out of our general fund, which reduces the amount of flexibility I have for discretionary spending.
So this is a shot across the bow, as you said. How should the people in the county interpret it, and how will that play out in the town halls when we go on the road?
Well, I think the one that really plays for is the board, because they're the ones that are going to have to vote on the millage rate for this summer. And the town halls, certainly a large aspect of them are to inform the people of how we got to where we are, what we're trying to do to solve it, and where we want to go in the future. But the bottom line is, there are 5 of us that were elected, and part of that responsibility when we're elected is to make the hard calls. And nobody likes to raise taxes. But on the other hand, it's equally difficult to cut services. Let's make no joke about this. We're not cutting services, we're firing people. Because 2/3 of our budget goes to pay for services, because that's how we deliver services in this county, with people. And if you want to see an immediate impact on the services that you're already complaining about, it'd be even worse, start laying off people. And I hear all this talk about we need to find more efficiencies and savings. Well, we've found those. I keep telling them, we found $10 million, and we keep trying to find more. We're selling property. The RFI for the garages, the draft is on the street right now to be reviewed by the county manager, and hope to have that out on the street next week. So we're doing all we can to cut those expenses. But let's not try to dilute the importance of this. If this is the kind of service you want in Cobb County, this is the price that it's going to cost you to do that. And this is a price that I know is accurate, because for the last year, the board and staff and I have been working on that price.
And again, we'll put the dates and times and locations of those town halls up on the screen at the end of this broadcast. And I know you're almost have your track shoes on. You're ready to get out of here. We need to take your mic off before you leave, because you're heading down to Atlanta for a big event surrounding the transit bill.
That's right. The governor's going to sign the transit bill this afternoon, and I'm pleased to be part of that ceremony, because we worked very actively to make sure we included in that, to send a message to the business community and to the people in general in the region that we want to be part of a regional partnership.
Here are the times, locations, and dates for the town halls that are coming up later this year. And be sure to subscribe to our Facebook page and our Twitter feeds to keep up on what's going on in Cobb County. And we will see you here next week.
I'll be back.
All right.